All right. Let's roll. Good evening, everyone. My name's Willow, and I'm the City of Eugene staff representative for this meeting. Before the chairs convene the meeting, I have a few reminders and introductory words. The purpose of the Active Transportation Committee is to advise the City of Eugene staff and community organizations and partners on the implementation of Eugene's pedestrian and bicycle strategic plan, to represent community and constituent interests in transportation planning decisions, and to provide feedback to staff on projects relating to walking and bicycling. The Eugene City staff will consider recommendations from the ATC along with input from other members of the public during decision-making processes. Please keep in mind that this meeting is being both recorded and live streamed to YouTube, meaning that it can be viewed on the City of Eugene Transportation Planning YouTube channel, both right now and in the future. The live transcription feature for closed captioning has been enabled. All verbal and written commentary will be held in the public record. Today's meeting will begin with a 15-minute public comment period. The public comment period is an opportunity for individuals to speak to the Active Transportation Committee on transportation-related issues. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. To indicate how you would like to speak, please use the raise hand feature within Zoom now. The chairs will call on you when it's your turn, and staff will unmute your microphone at that time. When it is your time to speak, please give your name, city of residence, and for Eugene residents, your ward or neighborhood. At any time during the meeting, you're welcome to ask a question using the Q&A function or use the chat feature for discussion with other attendees and committee members. If you're making a comment, also you can put your contact information in the chat, and that way we'll be able to sort of respond to you and get back to you based on your comment. Comments will be monitored and recorded, and anyone making inappropriate comments will be restricted from the live portion of the meeting. Questions will be answered at the chair's discretion. As a reminder, civil speech supports everyone in feeling comfortable sharing their perspectives and opinions, so let's give one another the respect and courteous and civil speech tonight. And with that, I'll hand it over to the chairs to convene the meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, Willow. Do we have any public comments?
Comments will be monitored and recorded, and anyone making inappropriate comments will be restricted from.
She's fixing a YouTube link, and it looks like, here we go.
Okay, I think the YouTube is paused, so that should prevent echoing.
Are we seeing any comments from the public on?
Yes, we have 3.
Okay.
Duncan, Sharon, and Paul have their hands raised, so I will bring Duncan in first.
Yeah, Duncan Rhodes, Eugene, Jefferson Westside neighborhood. I have 2 issues. As I was driving around a week or 2 ago, I noticed that the crossing on Harlow Road opposite that elementary school is lower than the road surface. And I've noticed this before in other crossings. And I thought this is counterintuitive, since it means everybody will get their feet wet in the winter. Reed said it was something to do with ADA. The only thing I know about ADA that might have an effect on this is its slope's got to be less than a couple percent, and you can't have more than a 1/4 inch difference in level. Sue went and saw it, and she didn't think it was depressed, but I beg to differ. And as I drive around, I will document other instances. The second issue I'd like to bring up is street sweeping. We have a lot of problem with getting the streets cleaned in the wintertime, especially with there's leaves on them and parked cars. And many cities have a parking ban on certain streets on certain sides, different days in the month, so that they can be cleaned. And I think that Eugene ought to at least look into the idea of doing that here, because it can be pretty nasty trying to ride your bike along a bike lane that's full of leaves. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Duncan. And then I think you said Sharon.
the meantime, Willow, can you let Michelle in?
Yeah, I think I just promoted Michelle to panelist, and I think I've just given Sharon permission to speak.
Sharon, you might need to unmute yourself.
Got it. How about that? Excellent. Okay, my name is Sharon Kaplan. I live in the East Skinner Butte Historic District, and I have two problem intersections for cycling that I would like consideration of. The first one is on 13th in the two-way cycle path. When you cross Patterson Street, Patterson is one way going south, and the bike lane, the pedestrian crossing, always blocks traffic, even when there's nobody that can turn from 13th onto Patterson. And so I regularly see pedestrians and cyclists just go through the red crossing light. So if that could be made to prioritize that when cars are going down 13th, that you can also use the north side of the street for the pedestrian crossing and bike crossing, that would be great. The second one is about Mill and Fourth. So coming from the riverfront on the cycle path they've added on the south side of the street, it looks like it's intending for you to turn directly into the new riverfront area. But on the opposite side of the street on Fourth, it starts a bike path on the other side of the street. So my question is, what are we supposed to do to get from the left side of the street to the right side of the street in that intersection there?
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Let's go on to Paul, and then we'll see if we have time for some comments afterwards from staff.
Paul, I've given you permission to speak, so you can unmute yourself.
See it now. Okay, great. Thank you. Let's see, I was out front patching a part of my sidewalk that need fixing, so I get credit for that. And then while I was out there, a friend came by, coming back in from a bicycle ride back to his house, and also Connie, who's someone who maybe only Sue would recognize as an old member of your group before anything like your group kind of existed, before I even moved to town. And both of them, and added to what a concern I already had, independently, they added this about the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit on bike lanes or bike paths that just all of a sudden popped up out of nowhere for me in the latest email from the city about transportation, and then also on a sign over in the Springfield area. And it seemed like the 20-mile-an-hour sign I saw in Springfield was from them, and the other missive I saw was from the city of Eugene Transportation. And I was really surprised. Let's put it this way, I was really surprised to see it. And both of these individuals I was talking to were really surprised to see it. One of whom is a bicyclist who does a lot of riding and can be one of those people who can ride 20 miles an hour unassisted. And Connie, who is a longtime rider on all the paths and has a proclivity to let people know they should slow down as it is. Anyway, I don't know where they came from. Everything I had ever heard of in the past was 15 miles an hour on where they could have a bicycle speed limit, 15 miles an hour. And I don't know what happened to that, but 20 miles an hour seemed really fast to me. And groups that I ride with who ride fast out on the road don't ride 20 miles an hour on the bike path, going out of town. They ride 15 miles an hour or slower. And it just seems like if cars can drive 20 miles an hour on the street, I don't know how exactly to put this, but I don't know how bicycles can ride 20 miles an hour on a narrow bike path with pedestrians and skateboarders and everybody else there. Okay, so that's it. You kind of get the idea there. And so I just kind of wonder where that came from. The other thing real quickly, because I don't know where I'm going with my 3 minutes, but this is an old time thing for me, which I put in front of a couple of people at the city in the past, but at 29th and Amazon, so that's where the dog park is. And if I'm heading on 29th into Amazon Park there, at the dog park, and so I'm crossing Amazon. And right now, and for actually quite a while now, for years now, at this point, there's a sign that says bicyclists use sidewalk. And now I've only used the sidewalk once just to see what it would be like to go up there and punch the button. Otherwise, I always cut over and use the straight through lane going into Amazon. Lots of bicyclists do that in the street. Some go up on the sidewalk. The sign says bicyclists use sidewalk. It doesn't say bicyclists may use sidewalk. If they change it to that, I'd be okay. I've thought about changing it myself, but I haven't gotten around to it. So the thing there is that it puts me in danger to have that sign there. It infers that I'm doing something against the law. It gives motorists the feeling that they can push me over to the side or be a little aggressive there. I don't experience that a lot, but I have a little bit. So I just feel like that sign should be changed, and that's all. And also, I don't need the full 20 seconds or whatever it gives me, 30 seconds to get across the street there. I can do it, by changing the signal quite nicely. And also, it's just a strange place to come off the sidewalk there. So it's better to be in the street, I think. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Paul. We only have 2 minutes for, I think that's all the public comments, Willow, is that right?
That's
Okay.
correct.
We have 2 more minutes for this, or 1 more minute now. So if staff would like to respond very briefly to any of those things, I think the one on 4th Street seems the most pressing.
I'll try to do a quick power thing. 13th and Patterson, we are working on getting the bike signal to go with the car signal at that intersection. We probably won't be able to do the pedestrian signal because the timing is just much longer, and then we'd have to hold the signals longer, whereas now we don't. So we can look at that later, but certainly the bike one will change at some point. I haven't heard from traffic ops when that's going to happen, but I believe it will happen soon. Mill and 4th, yes, the expectation is that you turn left if you want to go through and connect to High Street. It will be a much better system once the High Street protected bike lanes are in, and then it will connect up better. But for now, the idea is that we have put the bike lane markings in the crossing, so it's a bike crossing that occurs basically across Mill and then across 4th. So you do a 2-stage crossing to get over to the bike lanes there. It's not ideal, but you kind of have those 2 options of going over to the right. You could also stop in the 2-way bikeway, wait for traffic, and then merge over and get into the westbound bike lane. But those are sort of what the design was set up for. And then Paul, I'll be talking about the bike path or the shared use path, path etiquette and speed limits later. And I will look into that. Bicyclists may use sidewalk, because I agree with you on the wording there, and having that ability to use either location depending on your comfort and skill level. And Duncan's we'll have to get back to at another time.
Good, Shane, you did power through that. Okay, thank you, public commenters. We really appreciate your words. Let's go on to approving the August meeting summary notes. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes or notes from August?
I'll move to approve the.
Thank you.
I'll
Sue?
second.
Okay. All those in favor, put your thumb up or your hand up. Okay, it is passed. All right. Let's move on to the path etiquette update and requests. And Emily Proudfoot is here from the City Parks and Open Spaces. Thank you, Emily, for being here with us. And let's go ahead. Willow, I think you're going to start us out, or Shane?
I think Shane's gonna start us off on talking about path etiquette.
Okay.
Yeah. So thank you. Let me see. So I want to find this link that I meant to have ready. So let me just do that really quick. For for our Path Etiquette page. So we launched the Path Etiquette campaign. One sec here. There we go. Last year, when we started to hear more and more about concerns with speeds and different vehicles that were on the shared use path and how they were using it. And so I brought that to ATC in the past to show you some of the visuals that we were using and some of the wording for that campaign. We did a couple community outreach events last year along the paths, had some lawn signs that we put out. And then this year we reworded some of those lawn signs and took feedback from what we heard from people. And definitely, you know, one of the biggest concerns is speed. And so we've been working with parks on sort of what that, what the plan is for getting that word out. And the 20-mile-an-hour limit piece really came about through a lot of different conversations with a lot of different people, and how we came up with 20 as the maximum. One of the factors that determine that is that with all the new EVs, the legal limit for what defines a bicycle, as if you have an e-bike, if you have pedal assist over 20 miles an hour, then it's no longer a bike and it's not allowed on our shared use path network. And if it has pedal assist up to 20, then it's a class 1 or a class 2, and that is considered a bicycle under Oregon law. And so that seemed like a good maximum limit for us to set, because it was related to sort of all of our campaigns around 20 is plenty, and you know what's legally allowed as a bicycle with e-assist. And so I think one of the things that's really clear and has been clear from the beginning is that 20 is too much when you have other people on the paths. But when you're on your own and the paths are clear, 20 is not too much. And so I think that where we're really working is, you know, where we might put other speed limits, where it might be 10 or it might be 12, and signing that, or where we want to communicate. And this is more than just speed. Like, the reason we call this the Path Etiquette campaign is because it's about how people act around other people. Because what we also heard was passing too close, dogs on leashes that were really long and I couldn't pass, and people walking 4 abreast, and like all these other things that are really just about being nice. And like when you're out on the path, be considerate and share the space. And so I think that there's this sort of legal aspect of maximum, but then there's also this behavior aspect that we're trying to get at with the Path Etiquette campaign that talks more about what you know, what's appropriate and what's not. And I think one of the things that gets to this, and I just want to show this because I don't know if, you know, I don't think everyone has seen it, but by showing it, I'll also put it on the stream of this. Of this for our records. So I'm just going to show this little video, and maybe you've seen it or maybe you haven't. I'm going to see if I got to figure out how to get this bigger. Oops. There we go. And let me just make sure I've got my audio on. Y'all see that?
In Eugene, we love our bike paths. With over 45 miles of bike paths.
Excuse me, bike path?
Oh, whoops. With over 45 miles of paths, there's an option for all of us to get where we're going and enjoy the outdoors at the same time. Have you noticed there's been more and more people and a greater variety of wheeled vehicles on our paths? Like e-bikes, scooters, wheelchairs, skateboards, one-wheels, and more? As more Eugenians choose sustainable forms of transportation in the coming years, we're sure to see our paths get a bit crowded. So how can we keep everyone safe and care for each other out there? Well, first, let's keep speed in mind. Whenever there are other people on the path near you, go a safe and steady 10 to 12 miles per hour. If you're out at a time or location where there's nobody in sight, then you can move a bit faster, but no more than 20 miles per hour. Another helpful thing, keep to your side of the path. Stick to the right and don't use more than your half. If you're walking with a group, be sure to leave room on the left for passing. Oh, and keep your dogs on a short leash of 6 feet or less. It makes everyone safer. There's more we can do too. Let's give one another a heads up when passing by ringing a bell or saying, "Passing on your left." Be sure not to whiz by too close either. Lastly, use lights at night to see and be seen. That's a non-blinking white light up front and a red rear light. It only takes a bit of effort to share our paths safely, so we can all relax, enjoy the scenery, and get where we need to go. See you out there!
All right. So as you can see from that video, that's, the wording and phrasing that we're trying to use. That's what we used in a lot of our signs, a lot of our key points that are in our path etiquette posters and lawn signs, and on the more permanent park signs that we are working with parks to get out this late summer. So we have on order some permanent metal signs that will be put up that have, some of those key pieces, which if you look on that path etiquette page, and I'll just show some of those on here real quick. So the stay right, pass left. They share the path, everyone's welcome. Don't use more than your half. And then this is the sign that we've adapted from the other one that called out 20 miles per hour. This one is the go safe speed 12 miles per hour when others are present, 20 max. And stay right, pass left. So those signs, and we have a map, which I thought I had up, but now I don't see. Here it is. We have a map of where the potential locations are for those, and I can share this link with you all later so that you can go look at it. But basically, we have speed signs that will be up, and then some of these etiquette signs as well. So more of the speed signs than the etiquette ones, because that's what we hear the most about. And you'll notice a couple of these X's here, which are no electronic assist devices. And so those will be going up in the Willamette Natural Area as part of the change. So the section along the river and the Canoe Canal will be no electronic assist. But this one I think is in the, yeah, that's in the right spot. So limits along the Canoe Canal, but allows e-bikes through the Willamette area now because of the code change. And so these are potential locations. We can share it with you and you can give any feedback or comments about the locations. We still have to work with parks to determine the exact location, what works with existing infrastructure, and sort of, being conscious that we're not increasing sign clutter too much and actually putting signs that are effective up. But it'd be great to have ATC give some feedback. As you can see there along the Riverbank path, the Fern Ridge path, and the Amazon path. And some strategically located, like dogs on a short leash near the dog parks. Yeah, so we'll share that link with ATC and we can get some feedback on that piece of it. And I think that's all the basic pieces I had, but I'm open for more conversation and questions.
Okay. Anybody has a comment or question?
And I know Emily's on this piece too, but I think she's more talking about the next section. But I think if Emily, you want to say anything or anyone has questions around the parks piece too.
Yeah, we're here to support the effort, basically. And I do think, kind of locations, like especially your reflections on locations, I think are pretty key, like as really regular users of the system. And, I think we'll also be, balancing that with, oh, is there an existing light pole here that we can add that to? So, we don't have all this sort of other sign infrastructure that we need to maintain. So there's a balance in there somewhere, but I do think, getting feedback on locations is really helpful. So thank you.
And Sue, looks like you're up first.
Yeah, just two things. In the first place, I think the center line that went in on the West Bank path, I think that is helpful. I would like to see that in more places. And secondly, I was just wondering, do you have any way of, how do you judge if it's working? I mean, do you have any, it all sounds great, but I don't know if we have any baseline figures for how many people are going too fast and whether this changes behavior at all.
Yeah, we did a little bit of speed study last year. We didn't get a ton of numbers, but we got some, and we, like one interesting thing was the percentage of people who were going above 20 was pretty half and half split of regular bikes and e-bikes. So that was interesting. I didn't expect that. So we have some of those numbers, but I think that for us, a lot of this is also anecdotal in that we want to see people's attitudes change and people's comfort increase. And, I want to hear less complaints from people that people are speeding. And like, if I'm hearing the same amount or more about these issues, then it's not working. And if I'm hearing less, then it's working. Like, we hear about this quite a bit. And so I want people to feel comfortable. And and so I think going out and doing some monitoring, which we did and doing some of that post, and then just seeing what people's reactions are is going to be part of that.
Okay, and Alan?
I had the same kind of question, and maybe Anne or another academic could do some research to find out if other communities have done some baseline studies to find out what's most effective. Because I like the idea of the campaign, but does it make a difference? I really don't know. And then specifically, I'm wondering about the term electronic assist device. I understand that it's trying to be catch-all, but if I were to see that, I'm like, what the heck? Is that a pacemaker? Or so maybe there's a way to just say like e-bikes, e-scooters, and other devices or e-devices or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just a thought.
Yeah, because we also don't want to. We want to highlight that mobility devices that are electric for ADA access are allowed, right? Like people with mobility devices.
Mm-hmm. Julie?
I love the idea of the pathways being striped, for each side, where they are wide enough and where that's appropriate, because it really makes a difference. I mean, it makes a difference for the pedestrians and the dog walkers too. It sort of encourages people to, oh gosh, yes, we walk on the right as well as, people ride on the right. The other thing was more than one person has commented that in other communities that have infrastructure like ours, they often paint on the bikeway itself using a stencil, which is very cheap, the speed limit in that section. And I know that, Emily might not really love that in some of the parks, but it works really, really well, I think, compared to signage, because cyclists do look ahead on, you're looking at the path a lot of the time. You're looking up and you're looking down, you're looking up and you're looking down. And sometimes you don't look to the side to see signage, and plus you can do it much more cheaply. And it can just, you can do it they were saying it was like every 50 feet. I mean, they did not want you to go more than 10 miles an hour, and they made sure you didn't. So that's a thought too.
Okay, and Bryce, our Springfield friend from Springfield BPAC.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes, thanks, Bryce.
Okay, yeah, Shane mentioned something about monitoring to a minute ago to see how any of this is working. And my question is, what did that entail? What does monitoring mean? How did you get the data to see any of this kind of thing, any effects?
So we set out on sort of peak travel times and with a radar gun and sort of stealthily, would catch people as they're coming or going. And so, just so it wasn't obvious, would use the radar gun and record speeds on the path during peak times. So that was, I don't think it was scientifically, statistically valid, but it gives us some information. So.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was like some kind of self-reported thing or how it was done. So that's helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, and I think just real quick on the pavement markings too, that was brought up on the first comment that I didn't mention. When we put those pavement markings out on the path that you saw in the video there, that was sort of a trial, and I think we heard mixed reviews. I would say the majority positive, but definitely some people who didn't like the striping because it made that path feel less sort of natural. And it's a very beautiful section with trees and along the river, and it felt like it was turning it into a road and a transportation corridor, which it is, but it's also a recreational space. And so I think that we've definitely want to do more striping. We'll likely do it strategically in places where it would be most effective and needed, and sort of expand it as is possible. But then I think someone mentioned, I didn't see the comments totally yet, but the maintenance cost, that putting striping on all of our path network would cost quite a bit, not only to put in, but to maintain. So I think the strategic approach for now will be where we'll go. And I would like to see more of that happening. And I think that'll happen. It's just a question of where and how.
Shane, are all of the speed limit signs are the ones that say go at a safe speed, 12 miles per hour, and if people are present, 20 miles per hour max, or do any just say 20 miles per hour?
No, none say just 20.
Okay, because I also
none of ours. That was the original one. Did just say 20 miles per hour max.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if Springfield made the change because they used our first draft, and I'm not sure if they made any changes on theirs because they recently launched a program too, and they have signs that look just like ours, but in their Springfield green and their logo, as opposed to our Eugene blue.
Yeah.
So, which is great because if you're on their paths, you see those, and then you come into Eugene and you see ours. So
that's great. I also think 20 miles per hour is too fast, but so I don't. That might be something we need to revisit, but for now, and then I want to point out Cynthia's question. She's a community member, but she has a question regarding the Willamette Path. Why ban us with electric assist versus just posting lower speed limits?
And for those who don't know, e-bikes were banned in the Willamette Natural Area previously, and so there was some work done to allow e-bikes in that area again, and through that work, there were some paths that were deemed as areas that could still prohibit them to allow for the Willamette Natural Area to remain sort of that natural space for walking and comfort. And so that was a compromise, and allows e-bikes to still move through the corridor and use it, and just the sections that they're not allowed on are more narrow, asphalt paths that are either windy and have poor visibility, or are just more recreational walking paths. If you know the Springfield side, they have a section that goes along the river that bikes are not allowed on of any kind. It's just a walking path. And so this is sort of like when you're on the Springfield side and then you transition to the Eugene side, it's sort of like that section, but we haven't closed it to all bikes, just e-bikes. And so that was part of that compromise of making that happen.
Thank you. Let's move ahead now. We've got riverfront path closures and bike parking. So the question came up that there was a concern that the riverfront bike path was closed for a very long time while they were doing reconstruction and working on that. And some people feel like maybe it was longer than it needed to be. So we wanted to hear about that and see if we can find a way to help to make sure that that doesn't happen again on really any path. We don't want to have that long of closure. So if there's any way to ensure that. And then an ATC member had questioned the bike parking in the city parks and how that's planned and whether there's enough of it. So I think as long as Emily was going to be here, we added the bike parking onto that agenda item. So can we hear a little bit about the riverfront path closures?
Yes, all the things. Thank you for having me. So I think I need maybe just, first of all, somebody closed my bike route to work for 2.5 years and it was really annoying. And it was me. So I guess what I want, that's a way of introduction. I'm just saying, yeah, it was a really long time. I think I'll add that that project was probably the most extraordinary project that you're ever going to see along a riverbank path ever. Unless, of course, like something happens at Valley River Center where we just have some other thing or some other redevelopment of a site or something, that's near the river path. But so I guess my encouragement, A, yes, sorry, it was really annoying. And B, I don't think you'll see a closure like that again, maybe ever. We're very cognizant of that. Having said that, it was a significant redevelopment of that site. I mean, we did a major relocation of the path. We pulled the bank back. So it was just a huge, huge project that was more than just about the bike path. And it also included, construction of streets over there and toxic soils and all this kind of stuff. So, yeah, while I'm apologetic, also, we had a lot of delays. It's just a really, really complex project. So it was about $14.5 million. And again, I don't think you'll see us close the path again. But then also subsequently, I think I also maybe understood the question was really then the reclosure around the Riverfront Festival event. And so I'm not sure if that was also a question, but I think it's a good one. So I also don't think you'll see the World Games maybe come back to the city of Eugene. I mean, all this extraordinary stuff has been happening, so it's a little wild, and it does have impact upon our public systems in all kinds of ways. So the Downtown Riverfront Festival, I pushed actually to really sort of delay the closure of the path. I really didn't want them to close it until July 11th. If not later, given that the festival is going to start, like a couple days after that, like the 14th or something. But there were all these weird things around when they could get tents and when they could do this and do that. And so the setup just ended up being this really extended process again, for a lot of good reasons, but also not helpful to the bike path. So I don't know if we would throw the festival again there, Shane, but what I can say is I would anticipate more festivals on the riverfront. However, I would not, I have a couple thoughts about that. So the second phase of the Downtown Riverfront Park is in planning phase right now. So we have an additional, so all that grassy area where you could like watch the big Jumbotron or, all that grass, that's about an acre of grass there between the development and the bike path. And that is actually being planned for as a downtown riverfront plaza. And so that, ideally, a lot of our events are taking place in that plaza and not encroaching upon the bike path. So that's, we are building space for these types of events to happen and keep the bike path open. And I do not believe we have any kind of policy or anything else, kind of in place yet around, how we would program the spaces in the future. So it's all in a little bit of limbo. I think because we would have, potentially a detour through the neighborhood, I could see maybe the path closing for a day or two for an event. But again, it has to be an extraordinary one. And also like, we don't have policy around it. So I think, if you guys have strong, if any of you have strong feelings about like, we should never close it, or it's okay to close it for 3 days, or, hey, I was fine with 2 weeks, it's cool. Or I was fine with 2 years, it's cool, which I don't think you are. But, I think I welcome your feedback around it because I think it could inform policy and, kind of help us think about how we plan for sort of larger events. We are doing some sort of, our consultant for the Downtown Riverfront Plaza has been doing some sort of, for lack of a technical word, sort of blobby space planning around different sizes of events. So if you just were going to have a movie night in the park, well, that's kind of a small thing. But then if you were going to have a cultural festival, maybe it's a little bigger and it takes up the whole plaza. And then if you're going to have, a river fest, well, then maybe that takes up, much more and it closes the bike path, or you have to walk your bike through the bike path or something like that. I don't know. But so we are doing some of those kinds of studies. So that's what I know. Discussion, thoughts?
Okay,
Happy to
Sue.
hear it.
Yeah, I guess I want to push back a little bit on the closure.
Mhm.
I mean, I think we all get it when you were, changing the riverbank and doing
Yeah.
all the big engineering. That made perfect sense.
Yep.
We're delighted to see, oh, good, they're fixing the path. It'll be wonderful.
Mhm.
What aggravated people, and it became almost a joke, really, that
Oh, yeah.
the city is incompetent or something, was that we would, for months at a time, we would see nobody on the whole territory over there. And yet the path is still closed.
Mhm.
And that's the part that didn't make sense.
Mhm.
And I mean, and then for another extended period of time, oh, we're waiting for artwork.
Mhm.
Okay, there's a hole in the ground. Okay, so put a fence around the hole in the ground. We can work around a fence.
Mhm.
I just didn't see keeping the entire path closed for what, 2.5 years.
Mhm.
I guess.
I feel you.
And I guess the other thing that comes to my mind is that, as I understand it, the Amazon channel from like South Eugene High School to 24th is going to be widened and stuff. And I have to assume that that's going to affect that bike path. I don't know if that's part or whatever.
I'm not
But
sure.
it may-
Shane,
that
that's a
doesn't-
good question for engineering. Okay. Thanks, Sue.
Okay, and Alan.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the process, because that's to me what's really disconcerting about this. And it has to do with the detour. The detour was just added after, like a couple weeks after the closure, and there was no consultation with the ATC on what is the primary, the major route throughout the city. It's probably the most heavily used route in the entire city. And it seems like the Active Transportation Committee should have been consulted and come up with a real route for a detour that was less safer for one, and a little bit more convenient. I know that there were a lot of constraints, but I saw very few people taking that detour. It was very awkward. The signs were not very clear. There was at least one, I think, very dangerous part about the detour and so forth. And the bigger issue, which for some of you on the subcommittees have heard me. I'm gonna like just keep saying this until I'm blue in my face. But the real big issue here is that there is no policy for the Active Transportation Committee to be involved with major stakeholder decisions. Sometimes we're included, a lot of times we're not, and we don't know where and when decisions are going to be made. And until that, we have some sort of policy for that, we're going to keep seeing other kinds of issues where we're frustrated later on and having to rehash it after the fact. So I really want to see that happen. I'm going to be talking with staff in the future about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. And Andrew, this will be our last comment about this, and then we can get on to the bike parking segment.
Yeah, I'll keep it short because I think Clarissa's point in the comments about duplicative bike networks are really important and why we need, 12th and 13th right next to each other, right? And 8th and Broadway. But there's really not another bike path. There is one on the other side, but that's not always easy to get to. It might be a longer detour. It might not get you where you want to go without a much longer detour. And so I think when we're thinking about the path system in the future, and I really do hope actually that the riverfront is super activated and that lots of people ride their bikes down there and use that because it's a cool space and it's a really big community asset. But I think that we need to think about closures of our major bike network like we think about our major roads. And so it's not that big of a deal to close some small neighborhood street for a day. Like we closed a block or two, a fifth for the farmer's market. And I think that was really cool and a great use of our public space. But I don't think that it would be that easy to close 6th and 7th to traffic. And so I think when I think about like what types of events, like the World Games, yeah, totally. Like we probably should have closed some streets in Eugene and made really cool festival space. But just when we're thinking about the bike path, I think we should think about how important those networks are. And so when Broadway is shut down in the summer was shut down in the summer for like shared street space, it's not a huge deal for people not to be able to bike through there because they have 8th or they will have 8th. But when we're talking about the path, to me, that's like a 6th or 7th, and that should be like a really high magnitude thing. And I think that's a really good framework for us to do this fairly, because it's not like the bike network can't ever be shut down, right? That's unreasonable. But I think that if you just thought about it, like what would it take? I'm curious, what would it take to get a permit to shut down 6th and 7th for a day? That's probably much harder to do. And that's how I think about the bike network. So just maybe a thought on how we could approach it in the future.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. And I heard 2 things there we could work on, and probably more than 2, but 2 specific things that Emily is inviting us to suggest a policy for when they would have path closures or a limit or something. So that might be something we can work on in a subcommittee. Maybe the communications comes to mind. And then also Andrew's idea of like really, I don't know what it would take to have ATC be able to make comments at a time when it could actually make a difference, how to kind of insert ourselves in that. But that would be really worth taking a good look at. And so it might be that we have a recommendation about that, or we can think, Alan, what we can do for next steps on that.
And I'll just highlight, I think that that's definitely worth talking about more. I will highlight that this was brought to ATC, 2 years ago or more when the path closure was going to happen. We worked really hard to not have it closed. Like staff didn't want that path closed, right? Like that was for either construction or this. And so I'm not sure in this case, sort of what, having ATC say they didn't want the path closed would have necessarily done to change what happened. So I feel like there's some other sort of piece. And I think what you're talking about with, we wouldn't close, a major road. I think that there's some need for policy change that makes it so that there doesn't have to be something where ATC or, staff in PWE says we shouldn't be doing this. It should just be policy. Right. And so that's the question to me. It was like, how does that happen?
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Let's go on to bike parking. Clarissa, I agree with your comment there. And Andrew has a question that maybe somebody, a staff person, could answer in the chat. But Emily, do you have anything to say about bike parking in the city park?
Yeah. Okay. So I think originally I heard something about bike parking in the downtown riverfront area, and but then and so I'll answer Andrew really quickly, which is that we will not close the path as we develop the plaza if we can at all help it. If there's some kind of like day or two where we have to shut it down to one lane or something, we might do that. But I think our goal would definitely be to keep it open. So we've impacted the system enough, and so it'll be a high priority for me to keep that open. Okay, so bike parking in parks. So when I'm trying to remember, I do believe that we are required to put bike parking in park spaces as we develop them. And we always, anytime we're developing a new neighborhood park, that's at least a rack of 4. If we're doing some bigger work, or if it's in a really like a more popular area, sometimes we'll do a rack of 4. And then we've also done some sort of like, if we know a lot of kids are coming, like we've done some, or families will be there, like the new playground at Amazon Park. We might have even done this at Washington Park when we opened the spray play, but we've done some sort of larger size sort of bike SUV parking or bike RV parking, in which you have the trailer and the bike together, or you have the extended bike with the racks or whatever, but there's enough depth to the pad that we've been able to add those. I think we could always use more of them. I think we've put in maybe 2 or 4, but we could always use more spaces in some of those areas. For now at the riverfront, we have at least 4 racks at each intersection. And then we've completely changed out there's 2 sets of new racks of 4 in the eWeb Plaza. And then I think if we were to have an event, then we need to do valet parking, because we likely wouldn't have enough bike parking for an event. And especially if we're going to have an event on the riverfront, like we want a lot of people to walk and bike. So it makes good sense to have like a dedicated space for some valet bike parking or something like that for an event. So, I think, there might be parks out there that don't have enough bike parking. And so if we get a request, we try to actually honor that request and go out and put a rack or 2, or, if people are, we really try to accommodate bike requests if we're underserving the area. So does anyone have specific questions about that? And if it's a big park, we're definitely going to try to put, bike racks in several areas, like a community park or whatever.
I think it might have been Andrea who brought this up, and she's not able to attend tonight.
Oh, okay.
But it's good to know that you're responsive to like, there's a need at this park. Let's take a look at this specific situation. Oh, Andrew. And then we only have like.
I was just going to ask, if we have a request, how do we submit that to you?
Oh, you can so there's there's Park Watch. We also have you can just call 682-4800 and they'll send a message back to us. Just contact Public Works, Parks and Open Space. And we'll try to, but for neighborhood parks, those parks, we assume that you're going to bike or walk to. And so we always make sure that there are bike racks in those spaces. So, and then if we have a facility, obviously lots of bike racks.
Emily, thank you. You have a hard job. We appreciate you.
Holler if you guys have any more questions, or connect with Shane and we'll talk more. Appreciate it. Thank you all
very much. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Okay. The next one is sidewalks and pedestrian issues. We do have that sidewalk letter that was approved at our August meeting, and staff hasn't had enough time to really digest it. And Rob said he would get back to us in October with some kind of response about that. So we'll have more of a discussion then. So we'll send it out again. We want to make sure everybody's up on it, but it was really a request, or it was urging staff, I think it was to do 3 things. One was to formulate a strategy to develop our sidewalk system, considering the need of equity, connectivity, One was to consider alternative forms of funding mechanism to propose to the council. And one was to have a dedicated staff member to oversee and manage sidewalk repair and infill. So we don't want to lose that one. So it's placeholder right now, and then we'll get back into it in October. And then for the moving forward with the pedestrian issues, we have a little survey here for some interaction. And this survey has 6 questions. We're going to do one at a time, and some of them we'll discuss afterwards. And it's to get ATC member opinions and perceptions. And it's a little bit of an experiment. I don't know how it'll work. It's about how you perceive pedestrian, how we are doing as a pedestrian city and as a cycling city. And we want to make sure that we're not pitting bicycling against pedestrian issues here, but we're just getting, it's just sort of hopefully it will lead to some discussion. So I think we'll just go ahead and launch into it, and then you'll see what we mean. And it's for ATC members only, please, and everybody else can observe. And Willow put it into a survey format, so she'll put it up here and you can answer one at a time.
Are people seeing the survey? I just launched it. Okay, great.
You are?
It tells me that hosts and panelists cannot vote.
Oh, interesting. I wonder why. It looks like it's only letting attendees vote.
Clarissa sees it for some reason.
I see, I just
I
can't
see
vote.
it, but I also can't vote. Yeah, same as Andrew.
Darn.
I don't see it.
So some people are seeing it, some people aren't seeing it. This is our first time using a poll, so it's definitely.
And if you need time to fiddle with it, no, I was going to say we could go on to the next one, but you're in charge of that one, Willow. Let's see. And you're in charge of the next one too, I think.
Oh dear. Well, let me see if I can just fiddle with it real quick, and if we don't get it in like a minute or two, we might have to see if we can try it for next time.
Yeah. The first question, I'll just tell it to you, and so you can think about it well and see if she gets it up. The first one is, in your opinion, what is Eugene most noted for? That it has a great reputation for bicycling, that it has a great reputation for walking, for both bicycling and walking is the third choice, or for, maybe it's for neither. I forget. So it's just your opinion to see what you think, our reputation is. So I don't know. We'll give Willow another minute. Does anybody have something they want to say while she's messing around with that? Julie and Sue. Oh, you know what? We could, Josh, maybe we should take this moment while she's messing to report about the Saturday market bike parking.
Sure. Yeah, so on August 27th, a group of us went to Saturday market at 10 a.m. Julie, Mary, Susan were there. Also Andrea and Willie. I feel like I'm forgetting somebody. Am I forgetting someone? No, I got everyone. Great. So we went to the market, and we observed the bike parking that existed and the bike parking behavior that was happening. And we also chatted with some folks who were arriving by bike at the farmers market to ask them their experiences. And long story short, we found that there seemed to be insufficient bike parking at the market for at least the time of day and the day we were there. So I put together a draft report that I'm hoping to finish up with the other details. But then today, it sounds like there was a meeting with some city staff at the site. And so I was not there for that. And so I'm kind of curious to hear what came of that.
Julie or Sue, would you like to add on to the saga?
Sure, I'll launch in. So yes, myself, Mary, and Sue met with Shane Reed, a gentleman whose name, I'm sorry, I forget, who was the landscape architect from what firm? I don't remember. And
Cameron McCarthy.
yeah, and the manager of the farmers markets, and a very nice gentleman who had an interesting role that we never could quite understand with the city. And we discussed the bike parking situation, and we all learned a lot of things. I think that the farmers market representative was surprised that parking that is around the corner or a block away is not that much appreciated by cyclists, that we expect to be able to, go up and see our bikes and go right to our destination. That was news to her. And it was news to us that neither Saturday market nor the farmers market really like that idea at all, because it gets in the way of their access for loading and unloading. So there we have a little bit of tension to find spots where it's visible for an intuitive for cyclists, and it doesn't interfere with the operations of either institution. We also learned that one of the reasons why the bike parking seems really inadequate is because it is really inadequate, because it's not finished. And that's the good news is there's going to be more bike parking. The bad news is wait and wait and wait some more, because the bike parking is part of the whole park blocks redevelopment. And when City Hall is built, and when the pike, there'll be all kinds of different, spots for bike parking. So meanwhile, we strategize, where are some places that we can put bike parking, like right now, that will at least fill in as a temporary basis to alleviate both the crowding and the annoyance factor for people showing up on bikes. And so a number of different locations were identified, and really it's over to our, our hardworking city staff to kind of manifest that. So does that kind of cover it, Sue and Mary? What have I left out?
The one thing I was kind of most surprised to hear was that the overall plan is for the whole area of the farmers market, the Saturday market, both park blocks and the Wayne Morse Plaza, as well as 8th Avenue going through it, is all supposed to be part of this town center concept. And they're, by design, they want bikes to the periphery of it, which, because they want it to be a people place and people can walk, and they wanted bikes just kind of at the edges of it, and that actually is the concept that the city council voted in favor of. So it's kind of a done deal to a certain extent. I'm not super comfortable with that concept, if only because we saw so many people parking their bikes to parking meters or poles or whatever, trees, whatever they could find, because they don't want to park at the periphery. So, we kind of push back a little bit, and I think they get that. And I think the locations that we did find, while maybe not quite as front and center and prominent and telling you to ride a bike to the farmer's market, I don't know that we're going to get what we all might most prefer, but I think this will make it a lot better. And yeah, if a city hall ever goes in there, there should be lots of bike parking. I don't know if that's really going to happen, but anyway, so I think we did impress on them that it's, none of this construction is going to happen for at least another 6 or 8 months. So let's get some better bike parking in the meantime, at least. And they seem, they get it. The architect in particular, it's, there's some compromise on all sides, I guess.
And some of some of these things may not be built for years and years and years and years. I mean, there is no money for City Hall or park blocks or any of these other things. So the redevelopment of 8th Street, yeah, that's in the works, and that will affect some of it. But a lot of it is not going to get dealt with for years. And so, yes, there has to be bike parking. I think an interesting thing for me was I realized that I myself behave differently and think about differently when I'm in a car than when I'm on a bike. When I'm in a car, I'm happy to go look for parking. It just doesn't bother me. If I park around the corner, I don't care. That's park 2 blocks away. I don't care. When I'm on a bike, I really do expect to ride up to my location, park my bike. It's just it's a different way of approaching transportation, you know, and I think that was sort of interesting for me to realize that about myself. And I don't think that some of, you know, certainly the market manager that was just not, you know, she's a car driver, she doesn't ride a bike. It just never occurred to her that parking around, you know, on the other side of Willamette Street around the corner wouldn't be totally convenient.
Let's see what Josh has to say.
Oh, I just had a couple of questions about your conversation with city staff. Did you guys discuss bike valet or potentially wayfinding to that existing bike parking that might not be in sight but is nearby? Did either of those two ideas come up?
I would say bike valet did not come up. And then the other one, the wayfinding, there was some talk about Dylan from the city is going to make a map of where the temporary parking is. And so that could possibly be posted places so people could find it. And it wasn't definitive that there would be wayfinding to other bike parking, but it did come up. We will have to probably follow up on that one a little bit more.
And they did announce that at least one of the sites that's most likely is where those odd wooden posts to hitch up your horse are. And that's a great place to put more bike parking, but it's on Oak Street, which you would not ordinarily be riding your bike on. So they acknowledge you're going to have to guide people to that, at least initially. Once they know that it's there, they'll use it, but it's not the direction they would normally be riding their bikes because it's on Oak Street and nobody rides on Oak Street.
Yeah. But it was time well spent and they were responsive. It was a good meeting and that felt like they were really working with us to find solutions. And okay, I think we used up our time. So that's okay. We'll do this a different time. And can we go ahead and skip ahead to the next thing, Willow?
Yeah, we can. We were planning on talking about this at the last 10 minutes of the meeting. So I don't know if we do have 10 minutes if we want to visit this pedestrian thing or save it for next meeting.
Is it up? Is it ready?
Yeah, it turns out there's just a little sneaky little button that I click and then it lets panelists.
Let's see if we have time at the end then. Let's put it at the end and then we'll see if we get to it.
Sounds great.
Okay, let's go with the Think Bike workshop. So exciting.
Yeah. Okay, well that's me. I've got the all the details on the Think Bike workshop because I'm kind of putting it together. So I'll start you all off with, we have 3 Dutch transportation professionals coming to Eugene next week. They'll all be getting here on Sunday, which is actually only a few days away. And our Think Bike workshop is a 3-day event happening Monday the 12th through Wednesday the 14th. And it kind of has 3 primary components that I'll run through, and then I'll see if y'all have questions or anything. So the first component to the Think Bike workshop is an in-depth workshop for transportation professionals. This is kind of an invite-based opportunity for people who work in the transportation field to really have one-on-one case study-based interaction with the Dutch planners. And they're going to be looking at 2 case studies. We're going to be looking at an infrastructure case study, which looks at the Oakway protected bike lane that's going in over in the Oakway Center, which hasn't been designed yet. And we're really excited to get thoughts and feedback from the Dutch planners on that, as well as the neighborhood greenways that we have in town. So get some feedback from them on that as well. And then the other case study is a bike transit group, and they're going to be looking at the downtown station and then a few of the selected MX stations and how to sort of integrate bikes and transit better in Eugene. So that's the first component of the Think Bike workshop. Any questions or thoughts on that clarification? It's like people are.
I think ATC members were invited to that. Is that true?
Yeah, so I'll go over the next 2 pieces of the Think Bike workshop, and then I'll kind of clarify where ATC members are invited and where it's kind of closed to the workshop participants. So the second piece of the Think Bike workshop is the public event, which hopefully you've heard about. I've kind of been posting, and it was in the InMotion newsletter and stuff. That is on Tuesday evening, which is September 13th at 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. at Drop Bear Brewery, which is brand new. It's where the Turtles used to be on like 27th and Willamette, if people are familiar with that. So that's where the event's going to be held. It's going to be super fun. We're going to be doing a short film showing, like a 20-minute film showing. And then the Dutch planners are going to like give a talk, and then there'll be opportunity for discussion and interaction with them. So that is definitely a piece that everyone on the ATC is invited to. We'd love to have you there. It's going to be an opportunity to interact with the Dutch planners and really also sort of a community event. We haven't had a speaker of this caliber in Eugene for a while, I feel like, around transportation. So it's a really cool opportunity to kind of just get all of the transportation people together in town and have an opportunity to engage with each other and with the Dutch planners. Okay, the third piece is public presentations to community leaders. So in the first piece, which is the transportation professionals doing a workshop and looking at case studies, on Wednesday afternoon, they're sort of going to take their findings and recommendations and present them to some of the community leaders. That is also something that the ATC is definitely invited to. So if you want to hear about findings and recommendations based on those case studies, we welcome you to join for that. And that's going to be Wednesday, which is the 14th at 3 p.m. in the City Council chambers. I had never been to the City Council chambers before. They are in the LCC building, which is just directly across the street from the Eugene Public Library. So those are kind of the main pieces. The ATC members are invited to the public event at Drop Air and the community leaders presentation. Are there any questions or thoughts there?
Mary asked if anyone from 4J district has been invited to the Wednesday event, and I don't, beyond the Safe Routes to School coordinators who are also invited to the workshop aspect. I'm not sure if any leadership has. That's a good question.
Be really good to invite them with all. If it's not being done, I get, we can always send an invitation to school board members and administration, but it'd be really nice if it came from the city, I think.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Alan.
Yeah, I got an invitation from Rob Interfeld about a week ago, and he mentioned that the workshop on Monday morning is kind of open to the, not to the public, but to people who are interested in geeking out more. So could you clarify that? Is that from 9 to noon on Monday?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for saying that, Alan. That was something I was going to mention, is if there's anybody on ATC or in this room who's feeling super eager to be part of this and wants more than just the public event and the Wednesday presentation, we'd also open up the Monday morning session. And that is an exciting moment because a few folks, Andrew Martin and Rebecca Lewis and a student, are going to be presenting on the study abroad trip that just happened. So they'll be presenting, and then some of the Dutch planners will have like a 45-minute presentations as well. So if you really want to, like you said, Alan, sort of geek out on this stuff, you can also come to the Monday morning. And I think the easiest way for me to share that information with you is I have this like detailed agenda of the whole workshop, and I can email that out to the ATC with kind of highlighted, these are the places where it would make a lot of sense for you all to join us. And that can be sort of tailored to this group as places for you to engage.
And also, these are the ones you have to stay away from. Otherwise, some of us will go to all of them. You're not invited to this one. Sue.
Yeah, can any of these things be recorded so that people who are working or not able to go could listen to it at some other time?
Yeah, that's a great question. We are working with Metro TV, which is an LCOG organization, to record the Wednesday the Wednesday leaders presentation. So that's going to be recorded and live streamed. And I think that's really where like the golden nuggets are going to live from this whole workshop, is going to be that 2-hour block where the recommendations and findings will occur. And that's what we're going to record for anybody who wants to watch it and isn't able to attend.
And Bryce, I hope that people from Springfield know about this and have been invited as well.
I actually just met Michael, who's the transportation planning engineer. I met him yesterday and I shared this info with him, and I think he's going to send it to BPAC.
Okay. I think it's the kind of thing where all of us should tell all of our friends and see how many people we can get there, because for the Tuesday thing, because we want it to be more widespread than just the people who usually show up, if we can. I think it'll be very interesting.
Yeah, so far it feels like there's a lot of enthusiasm around the Tuesday event, which I'm sensing, but I'm also very much in the scene. So it'll be interesting to see how much enthusiasm we end up with and how many people come. Speaking of the Tuesday event, Mary and I were chatting about maybe having an ATC member sort of do the introduction on Tuesday night. So everyone's going to be there. The event's going to get started. And it'd be great if an ATC member could kind of welcome everybody and kind of talk about why this event is important, why it's meaningful to have these Dutch delegates in our city. And we would love to have somebody from this committee do that to kind of make it feel like it's more of a community-based endeavor. I don't think I need like somebody to raise their hand right now. I think the best way for this to go is maybe for me to send out the agenda with like, this is where ATC can be involved. And if you're interested in being that person who does that introduction, if you want to just email me back and be like, I would love to do this. And then if we get a few people who are interested, we can, I can email them all and figure out who really wants to do that intro. So does that sound okay for how to move forward with that?
Sounds good.
Cool. If you do want to do it and you hesitate because you're like, I want the opportunity to be for somebody else, don't hesitate. Just email me and we can figure it out who ends up ultimately doing it. But if it's even a little bit of an interest to you, just email me and we can go from there.
Okay.
Thank you, Shane, for putting the Tuesday event Facebook. I also I'll put the Eugene calendar event in the chat as well. They basically have the same information, but depending on which venue, if you're not a Facebook person, there's the Eugene calendar event also.
Okay. That's everything, Willow?
That is everything.
All right. Any more questions or comments on the Think Bike? How about the, they're not in session. I was going to say, what's that University of Live Move? They're probably not assembled yet. Anyway, let's see. Let's go on to project updates. We're a little ahead now. Project updates and information share. The first thing there is the LCOG Oregon Friendly Driver.
Okay, that's me sharing on this also. So the Safe Lane Coalition is hosting an Oregon Friendly Driver class on September 19th from 6 to 7:30 at the Eugene Library. And this is a totally open to the public event. The purpose of the Oregon Friendly Driver program is to essentially teach people who drive cars how to drive in a way that is safe and like good interactions with people who are walking, biking, and rolling on various things. And it often addresses like specific infrastructure in the city where it's being hosted. So if there are questions like specifically around, say, the 13th Avenue Bikeway or something like that, the Oregon Friendly Driver class can approach that. And it's welcome, you as ATC members are welcome to join if you want more information, but I think it would also be really useful for you to pass along the info of this class to anybody who you think would benefit from learning more about being a safe and effective driver around people who are walking and biking. So that's the purpose of the Oregon Friendly Driver class. I think I have a link for it somewhere that I'll try and get in the chat for us. The other thing I wanted to mention, not related to the Oregon Friendly Driver, kind of another info share, is that the Saturday in the Park event, which you may have been familiar with through Smart Trips, it was supposed to be this Saturday. It has been canceled and rescheduled to October 4th. That's because I think it's supposed to be 99 degrees and bad air quality that day. So there's a heat advisory, which is the purpose of rescheduling that.
I think isn't that October 2nd?
Oh, October 2nd.
Is that right?
Sunday,
Yeah.
October
Sunday the
2nd. Sorry. Thanks, Shane.
Yeah.
I think Shane might have a few pieces for the info share, and then we could open it up to ATC if anybody else has things.
Yeah, I feel like I'm missing something, but the two pieces I wanted to highlight is the Whitaker Community Council is doing their art walk that will highlight the murals that were done over the past month. And so their art walk is, when is that? It's the last Friday of the month. And so when is that? Sorry, the 30th, September 30th. I don't have the full details on that, but that's definitely something to watch out for. Yeah, I think we'll probably post that on our socials and can let people know, but I would definitely look at Whitaker Community Council and participate in that. We are also talking about leading some sort of ride, and that's TBD and something that we'll plan in the future. And then the other thing that I wanted to highlight is that I am working on leading a Kittical camping, the family bike camping ride that we usually do in June is happening in September this year. So as opposed to a kickoff of summer, we're doing a wrap up of summer. And even though school started, we're planning a family bike camping trip September 24th and 25th, which is that. So Saturday night, we'll be biking from Monroe Park and Saturday out to Armitage Park and doing a family bike camping trip out there. And what's really kind of got me motivated to do it is that weekend also happens to be this really big push worldwide. There's a German group that's really picked up the Kittical Mass mantle and has been doing a lot of work to spread the Kittical Mass movement, especially in Europe. And so they are encouraging folks to hold rides on that weekend. And they've got a whole big map of where those rides are happening. And so we're sort of tagging into theirs. I put the link on the site there. I'm encouraging other communities to hold them as well, but it's just really exciting to see these rides take off. A lot of them are doing them different than we have traditionally. When we started doing them in Eugene, when we kicked it off, we really wanted rides that weren't closed down to cars, that we would actually be riding on regular streets on regular days. But a lot of the ones that they are holding are more like larger sort of protest or just, even police escort or closed streets, which is great. They're getting, hundreds and thousands of people out on these rides, and it's really great. So, but anyway, that's we're doing our little ride on that weekend. And if you know anyone who has kids and would like to join in, it should be some pretty fun. And then I have to look back at my notes because I feel like there's something else and I don't.
Were you going to do an update on where we are with the timeline for High Street? Or
I wasn't, but excuse me. But I can say that High Street is not happening this year for sure, and that it will go out to bid for next year. So it will happen in 2023. 8th Avenue and the protected bike lanes on that project. We did get back from ODOT, and that will be going out to bid soon. And so that will happen early 2023. So I do know that 8th Avenue is happening first, and it will most likely happen in conjunction or in that section of Park Blocks first, and then east, and then the western portion of 8th. And then, yeah, I think that's it.
And people wanted to talk about Franklin Boulevard, and that is scheduled for October. We have a lot scheduled for October, so we see if it can all fit in, but we will have an update about Franklin Boulevard. And the question was, what have you done with our recommendations and our suggestions for Franklin Boulevard? And we'll hear from people then. Any other project updates?
Oh, not a project update, but another info share is I am teaching after the 3-day workshop. I am teaching a bike safety education class, a smart cycling class on Thursday the 15th, and that's an 8-hour course that is your basic smart cycling class. And I'm teaching it for bike safety education instructors for the city of Eugene. We'll do another one in the spring for Willamette Lane or any other instructors. But anyone is welcome to take this. It's sort of focused on professionals, but anyone in the community can take it. I'll put the link in now that I know we're not too full with bike safety education instructors quite yet. And I even had someone from Bandon call me who was interested in the class, and she's probably going to come over for it. It is a prerequisite for if you're interested in becoming a league cycling instructor. It's the prerequisite course to become certified as an LCI.
Okay. All right. And a Climate Revolutions ride Cynthia posted on Sunday, a river ride. Should be really fun. Okay. Any other project updates or info shares? Okay, let's see where we are. We are on schedule plans. Willow, did you want to start us off with the schedule plans?
Yeah, I can do that. I don't think we have a ton figured out yet, but per usual, our next October meeting will be the second Thursday of October. And I think we still need to discuss if we're, okay, October 13th, that's what we have for the next meeting. And we need to discuss if we're gonna head to that hybrid option or not for October. I think it's still undecided at this point. And I think that might be a conversation between me, Shane, Mary, and Sue, maybe at our next planning meeting to discuss if we're gonna head towards that hybrid setting or not.
Okay,
So stay tuned.
since we have another minute for this, I'm thinking that we are heading toward meeting virtually with a hybrid. And then maybe we were going to put in something, and, you know, even if you can't come, please try to come at least once. I forget, I don't know how, you know, what we're going to propose. Is there any discussion before if we were to do that in October, is there anybody on the committee who has something to say about that? Because I think that's our assumption based on this one survey we did and what we've talked about. But if there's anything you want to say about that, would you please do so now before we start making plans? Okay. Sue.
I would just say, I think we need to try to decide kind of early, because we've already booked Clarissa to make a presentation to us, and she kind of needs to know if she's doing it in person or virtually, so.
Okay, so unless we hear from ATC members, you know, has some compelling reason, I think Sue and I are thinking we would like to move towards in-person meetings with the virtual option. And we'd like to do it as soon as possible. And, you know, I think we'll find out pretty quickly how that works. So that's what we're planning, unless
From
we
what
hear.
I understand, the city has some facilities that can support a hybrid meeting setup. So we should be able to support that from a tech standpoint.
I'd certainly at least give it a try. You know, if it just doesn't work, we can always go back to virtual, but I'd certainly like to at least give it our best effort.
It used to work. So, okay, subcommittee report backs. What are you doing, subcommittees?
I can start for the infrastructure committee. We met, I think, last week. I think the big news for us is we're planning a walkthrough of South Willamette between 18th and 20th. I sent a doodle poll. If anyone's available or interested in joining, I will put that in the chat in just a sec. And then I will send out kind of more instructions to those who work and a final time, etc. So that should be in a couple weeks.
Okay.
You're next for Education and Program Subcommittee. Met a couple weeks ago on August 18th, and we talked about 4J and transportation. And some of the key takeaways of our discussion was like, how can we help reduce the number of parents driving their kids to school, as well as how do we get in touch with like school admins, which I think Julia Daniels is kind of getting in that piece right now, maybe talking to the superintendent and seeing how we can maybe kind of change policy and really just like think about how to get a better infrastructure around schools, reaching to principals and as well as to teachers, and maybe petitioning like the school for better transit in many ways. There's a lot we talked about in this big discussion, but really it's just like, you know, how can we like ask 4J to make some changes, and how is ATC's role to get the city to maybe ask 4J to make changes. We also talked about auditing, an info audit for school data, maybe reaching out to LCOG to see if we can get some data around what exactly is that, to help with recommendations for the city to maybe ask 4J, and as well as maybe doing some background work, maybe getting looking to the U of O, maybe asking Ann Brown to maybe get some students to design some methods on maybe just getting some research around like getting more data around like what to present to the city to 4J. And yeah, and then we talked about some pedestrian friendly city, and that just really briefly, like we're apparently a gold level city, maybe we can do better than that. And then lastly, we just touched on, you know, kind of start thinking about when we do the Think Bike with the Dutch bike ambassadors coming, maybe doing an ATC retreat after that. And, just thinking more about that, of that vein of when should we all meet for an ATC retreat.
Thank you, Justin. How about the communications committee? Anything from you?
Sue, you asked me to report back on the thing we talked about, and I totally forget what it is now. Do you remember, or Alan?
No, that's a shame, because I was thinking, I know somebody else was going to report back, and I don't remember what they talked about.
It was a pretty light meeting. I just am totally blanking on what it was. We did talk about the bond measure for a few minutes, but no action item out of that, I think, for the ATC. And I'm blanking on the main topic now. Alan, it was your topic. I'm looking to you. It wasn't a super heavy topic, so we kind of just hung out for an hour and talked about the bond measure and something else we're interested in, but there wasn't a big follow-up from the full committee.
Thank you. Anything else before I think we have time for our survey now, right? We got to the end. Yeah. Let's try the survey now, Willow.
Okay, let's give it a go. Okay, I've launched it. Are people seeing it this time? Getting some nods.
No, why are some people yes and some people no?
No, that's odd. Okay, well, I've got a backup, which is Mary, the link you sent me for the folks who aren't seeing it. There's like a separate link survey that I can send. I'll put it in the chat for anyone who's not seeing the poll.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wait.
So use the poll if you can, but if for whatever reason the poll's not working, you can go to this other link.
I don't know if we'll be able to see everybody's. What do you think it's in the chat?
There's got to be something she's
doing.
Like Mary found it.
Unmute. Who's got the survey? Can I just see a show of hands? Okay. And if anybody doesn't have it, somebody who doesn't have it. Okay. I don't have it. So did everybody already answer the first one?
Yeah, it's showing that only 3 people have answered the first question, but
that's because some people are doing it in the other link, right?
4, 5.
How many do we have? 1, 2,
5 people have now answered it. Yeah, finish. I think it's just like everyone's going to finish the whole survey and then I can share all the results and we can just go through each question.
Okay, go ahead and do the whole survey then. Seems like I wanted to discuss after, but that's okay. I'll lower my expectations.
Yeah, I think it has to be set up different because you can launch different polls. But you'd have to have
Oh, we do a different poll for each question.
For each question, yeah.
Oh, okay.
But this is just one poll with all the questions.
Are you going to be able to bring up the results at the end or? Okay.
Is there anyone still working on it? Raise your hand.
I think I'm only seeing 7 people have finished so far.
But I think that's everyone who can see it, or
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We should have 10. Why would I be the only one who can't see it? That's weird.
All right. Well, I'm seeing that there's nine folks have participated. And Michelle, if you're doing the one from the chat, then I think that puts us at 10. So I'm going to end the poll and then we can discuss the results.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. It says I'm sharing. Do people see it?
No.
That's so strange. Mary and Michelle are just the odd ones
Mary,
out.
are you up to date on your Zoom account? Sometimes you can't see things if you are not at the highest update.
Oh, I bet I'm not. I'm never up to date. Okay. You guys will just have to spell it out for me, what everybody said. So, let's see. Which
We
is
can actually share this. I can share the screen too. Hold
okay.
on.
Yeah, Shane, do you want to try that?
Yeah. Let me see. You'll see. It's not super clean, but it will. It should work. You see that, Mary?
I see
Nope.
mushrooms.
Mushrooms.
You only see the mushrooms. You don't see the poll. Oh, because it's on my Zoom.
Because it's on Zoom. Sometimes Zoom hides Zoom things from
It
screen
does.
share.
Yeah.
So I think we can just talk through the rest.
We'll just limp along. Okay. Which is Eugene most noted for? Biking, walking, both, or neither, I think, for the ones. What did we get, Willow?
We got 7 out of 9 folks said excellent for biking.
Uh-huh.
And 2 out of 9 said none of the above.
Oh,
Not
that's
excellent. Yeah.
Oh,
So
so
no one selected walking or walking and biking.
that is really interesting. Okay. I think we'll wait for the discussion on that. What's the next question?
Which of the following standards has Eugene achieved as a bike friendly
Yeah,
city?
this is to the best of your knowledge. What did we get?
Everybody said gold.
And the answer is
Gold.
gold. Woo! It's okay if you don't get the answer right, though. Okay. How about how about for pedestrians? What did we get for that?
So this one was the same question, but for pedestrians, 5 out of 7 folks said gold. And 2 out of 7 said none of the above, which if you did say that is, maybe not surprising.
I think I told some people and forgot that I told them. And then I think that Justin said something, so we kind of gave it away. But yes, we have gold standard, but it was from 2011. And Reed said he submitted it, an application, and he could probably tell us more about that, but he was kind of surprised that we got gold as well. So yes, we have gold standard, but it's probably not up to date, but we'd had at one point gold standard as walking. How many of you heard that like in the last week or so that we have gold standard, like we said, okay, I think, all right, no wonder. Okay, and 1 through 10 for biking, 10 being the highest, what'd we get?
Okay, we got one person said that it gets a 2. 2 people gave it a 5, 2 people gave it a 6, and 3 people gave it a 7. And then nobody gave it an 8, 9, or 10 for biking.
Does anybody want, I think we have time for just a few comments if somebody wants to say why they said what they did. Love to hear about what you're thinking.
I was the one who gave it really low. I think that the question wasn't specific enough, like, oh, in America. And I was just like, well, we're saying that we're a gold standard for America, but I think that we have so much more that we can do and so much more that we can go for that it's like, there's more to reach for. So I was kind of like thinking about that as I was putting that down.
Yeah, worldview, that's a good perspective. Somebody else want to say why they did what they did?
Sure.
Julie.
I gave it a 5 because we have a great reputation, and it, as Clarissa says, it is compared to most cities in America. We have a really great bike system compared to compared to how it is compared to driving a car. It's pretty poor. So I split it in the middle and said, this is a car-centric city, very much so, and yet our biking system is better than most. So I gave it a 5.
Okay. Andrew.
Yeah, I gave it a 6 because it is pretty good, but I think you have to really deliberately cultivate that. And I am fortunate that I can choose where I want to live in the city. And so I live in a pretty bikeable place, and my work ends up being in a pretty bikeable place. And so it's possible for some people to cultivate a lifestyle around a bicycle. And for a lot of people, it's not. There are a lot of neighborhoods that aren't bike friendly. And so I think we're really mixed in that certain parts of the city are super accessible. but a lot of our city isn't very accessible. And, you know, I'm fortunate to have choices and a lot of people aren't. And I think that our standard should really be making sure that everyone has that option.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody who hasn't had a chance to say anything tonight want to say anything about that? Josh?
Yeah, sure. I also gave it I think a 5 or something like this, for most of the reasons people have given. I think part of it is that transit wasn't sort of included in those questions. I think if you're a bike advocate, you sort of necessarily have to be a transit advocate. So I think I'm just coming back from Mexico City where biking was really easy, but then, you know, if you got tired, you could hop on the metro or something really easily. You really don't have that option too much in Eugene. So I think, you know, we talk about biking and bike infrastructure, but that has to come with these other parts, which are maybe better infrastructure for transit, but also walking.
Yeah, that's why we don't really want to pit them against one another, but yeah, how they can be more
It's
integrated.
a synergistic thing. I don't know if it's a good idea to say biking, walking, you know, pigeonhole everything, all it sort of has to all come together.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, let's go on to the next one. A 1 through 10 for pedestrian. I was going to put transit on here, but I didn't do that. 1 through 10 for pedestrian. What do we got?
A little bit more across the board. We've got 1 person for 3, 2 people for 4, 1 person for 5, 3 people for 6, and 1 person said 7. So it definitely varies.
Anybody say why they said what they did?
Oh, yeah. So I feel like we make a lot of decisions for bicycles, sometimes for transit, definitely for cars, at the detriment of pedestrians. And so while I think there's an evolving understanding in the city that at some point in our journey, we are pedestrians, even if for a short span, we're still not taking a huge amount of responsibility for that. That sort of feeds into the sidewalk conversations we've had where, you know, it only goes so far, and then it's the property owner's job to make sure that pedestrians are doing well in this city. And so I ended up giving a lower score of 4.
Andrew?
I also gave a low rating, but for a different reason. And it's maybe one that we don't have as much control over, but Eugene's too suburban to really walk places. Like a bike gets you a few miles, but walking, you know, 30 minutes, you can go a mile and a little bit maybe. And there's just not that. I live in DeWitt, and that's probably the most walkable neighborhood in Eugene or close to it. And, you know, there's just not that much within walk. I mean, our sidewalks are mostly okay. Most neighborhoods have sidewalks. They could be a lot better, and they should be, and we should work on that. But I think we're just kind of too suburban to really have that much within walking distance of most people. And that's a land use issue, but it's also a transportation issue. They're not going to walk if there's nowhere to walk to.
Sounds like somebody else I heard today. Justin?
I'm just going to echo the same thing that Andrew and whoever else said as well. I did a walking audit when I was intern for Safe Routes to Schools. So I've walked a lot of around Eugene and different areas of different schools around 4J district, and definitely areas where there's no sidewalks, definitely areas where sidewalks are just completely a mess and you're going to trip over something, or just the network connectivity to like transit or just to any type of facility to get you to where you need to go. It's like, it was just really, I'm more biased because I like seen it, you know, and I was like, I had to do it for work. So yeah, we can do a lot better. I gave it a low, I gave it a 3.
Anybody else? Michelle. Okay. How about the last one then? How should we spend our time? This isn't binding or anything. It's just like gives us a sort of a perception. Let's see, I forget what the questions were.
Yeah, so Mary created this survey. Mary, just FYI, I did add one additional piece to this question, which was that we should spend more time on transit issues.
Okay.
So I did put that in there just in case anybody wanted to select that one, but nobody did. So we had 2 folks who said the status quo is good. We currently have a good balance between all the transportation issues. They're feeling like we're, you know, touching on things in a good way. One person said we should increase the amount of time we spend on biking issues. One person said we should increase the amount of time we spend on pedestrian issues. And then 4 folks said other, which I think I was kind of expecting for this question because it's a little bit more nuanced, right? It's not really one or the other. So I can read a few of those answers out. One person said I'd choose walking in transit to have more time. So they wanted to kind of select both of those. One person said we should focus on connectivity and networks, both bike, ped, and transit. So that was kind of what we were getting at earlier with like, it's this holistic kind of network-based thing. The next response was, I think we need to focus on where members' interests lie and where we can be most effective. We've definitely underemphasized walking in the past. And actually, I think there should be a pedestrian committee and a bike committee because really all that they have in common is that they're not cars. And other than that, not much else. So that was one of the comments. And the last one is we should acknowledge how these issues are in tension and cannot be discussed independently. 13th Avenue is a two-way bikeway, a key transit route, and a pain for pedestrians to cross. So how everything's kind of interconnected there. So those are the responses.
Yeah, those are good nuanced responses. Anybody have any comments to add? And can those be recorded, Willow?
Yeah, I can copy and paste the responses into the notes for this meeting.
Okay. Okay, thank you everyone for playing along. Anything else for the good of the order? I think we're done then. Oh, Sue.
Can I just say real quickly, I've nagged Reed about this, but the closure going on right now between the Fifth Street Market and the alley across the way on Pearl Street is it's a horrible detour. I mean, you actually, there's nothing, if you're approaching it, there's nothing that makes, it says road closed. And there's not a detour. It turns out that if you ride your bike on the sidewalk on the left, you can actually get through, but there's nothing that tells you that's true. And I was walking around there last night and I nearly broke an ankle because it's sort of like I was following what I thought was their detour sign, and there was a string across there at ankle height. And so, whoa, shoot. They need they need to tell us where we're supposed to go. I mean, you've got a one-way street in the wrong direction on either side of that street. And it's just not at all clear where you're supposed to go. Brian Obie can afford to do better than that.
Okay. And then before we close, Bryce, do you have anything to report from BPAC?
Hello. Well, not a whole lot because we are down 4 members, I think. Emma also just left, so Michael's kind of running the show. We had our full meeting a couple weeks ago, I think. Didn't have enough people to be able to do too much in that. And then we had our combined our subcommittee meetings on Tuesday, and we just did a safe streets audit. Another one, there's going to be another one coming up. We discussed possible areas for that. And then the infrastructure subcommittee, which I'm on, we're discussing the bike parking, but Kelsey wasn't available for our meeting. I think she was sick. So we're kind of waiting for some more information to come in from her. So couldn't get a whole lot done lately. If anybody knows anybody who's in Springfield that would like to be on BPAC, we are not hiring, it's the word, recruiting. There's some flyers and information out about that. But yeah, that's kind of where we are right now. We're a little bit in limbo as we didn't have a quorum the other day. So not a lot going on right now, but we are working on getting some more members and proceeding on with projects.
Yeah, good luck with that. That's, yeah, going through a little bit of a lull right now. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Bryce. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody, I think we're done. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.